Okay, thank you guys. Welcome to another Launch and Learn today. As I mentioned, we are going to talk today about enterprise level REST API. Our speaker is going to be Joao Ventura. He is a Python developer, part of our amazing team in Brazil. So welcome everyone, and let's start.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for joining us today. And can you still see me? Okay, so hello, can you see me? Yes, okay, perfect. I don't see you guys. I'm going to talk about enterprise level REST APIs and what does it mean? I have a really strange career. I spend a lot of time working on industry, and when you reach applications that affect a lot of subproducts, a lot of IoT, the way you have to think it's using more automation. So first, I'm going to just do a quick review regarding how we used to make REST APIs, and before that was the standard way of making APIs, which was SOAP. So SOAP originally was mostly used in industry and bank systems, and it stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. It was released in 2007, and it is a message layer over, it's an XML message layer over HTTP, and is a standard made by W3C Consortium. So, okay, the slide's moving too fast. So it defines a message structure, and it is not something that you as a user can define like REST API protocols. And it is a well-defined standardized way so you can express the encoding both in the backend and the client on how to communicate. Where is it? The main characteristics about the SOAP protocol, it's how you can extend and preserve the security, and it has a neutral way to operate over the protocol you're using. It can mean the SMTP protocol for email or HTTP and TCP UDP. Comparing this to the REST model, it's much less flexible. And REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It was first introduced in 2000, and it's based on hyperlinking. And it doesn't define so strongly how you communicate like XML like SOAP protocol. And you can not only use XML to do the communication, but also JSON files and other strange ways to communicate, like binary files. You can send images, for example. So doing a small comparison between, just 1 minute, please. Perfect. Comparing the way you do the REST representation with the SOAP representation, as I mentioned, it's more flexible than the XML, and this can introduce inadvertent errors due to the unexperienced user in trying to code the API. And remembering, since it was first introduced by banks, the SOAP is more rigid than the XML, than the REST API. Thinking this way, just doing another quick review about software development, especially Kanban. Go on. Okay, so most of the teams on agile development software are used to two ways of manage teams. One is Kanban, which was created by the Toyota production, which make cars in Japan, and the other is Scrum. So, especially in Kanban, Kanban was created in the context of automobile industry. It was meant to be used in a production line of cars. And a lot of buzzwords you're probably used to listen, which is agile software, Scrum, X-Spring programming, CICD for continuous delivery, Spotify squad, that it is a team with multiple experienced employees, a designer, a DevOps, a backend engineer, a front engineer, a mobile, and the Scrum Master who removes the barriers between the team and the the professionals I just mentioned. And this is the how you would structure the production of the Kanban squad. I think Spotify use this as well, but some from most of the teams pay attention only to the buzzwords. They don't pay attention to one of the main features that I didn't mention here. So why can we say that agile software is a lie? Because when you see the fundamental stones of the Kanban, you ignore the base, and the base is the stability and the standardization. I came from a weird background because I started working on IBM, so everything there it's huge. Like I think in Brazil they have more than 1,000 employees, and I also work in industry. I also work in a restaurant because my family has a restaurant. So from time to time, I was on the weekends. I was working in the kitchen of the restaurant, and now my mom's working Outback for people outside Brazil. It's like the Cheesecake Factory, but with Australian foods. And first, let's define a really raw concept of a tool. A tool is something that is made to use less energy. So a crow can use a tool to break coconuts, break little. I don't know coconuts. I don't know the word in English, but a monkey can use a tool to try to eat ants on the wild. So what is a tool? A tool is a utensil. So instead of work harder, you work smarter, and it is quite intuitive concept when you are a farmer, when you are working with something that use your hand. But for some strange reason, we as software developers forget this. So we don't see how much effort, energy, and time we are spending. Consider this. As I mentioned, my mom's working in a kitchen. And if you go to McDonald's, I don't know if you have ever repaired. This is the top of the cup when you order a Coca-Cola. And for those who have seen the movie about how the guy stole McDonald's idea, the main success of McDonald's was due process. How you move inside the kitchen, how you mark the hamburger. If you go to the McDonald's, you're gonna see that there are numbers for between the hamburgers. And why they do this? Because everything inside the store is made in order so you don't think. And when I say you don't think, because thinking is extremely expensive. You don't think when you are driving a car, driving stick. For people who live in America, the car is automatic. So you don't think about changing the gear. You just do it. You don't think about changing the balance when you are riding a bike. You just do this. So everything inside McDonald's, inside Outback, is time control and under process. For example, there's nothing more irrational than a human being hungry. So it doesn't matter if you go to the restaurant and you get all the dishes for free 4 hours later because you are angry. And you're angry because you're hungry. You want to be served as fast as possible. It doesn't mean if you are going to a 3-star Michelin restaurant. So how do you solve this problem? First, we standardize everything. If you go to the standardize mean, the standardization is less about not thinking, but much more about remove the barriers of the mechanical thoughts and just focus on what have to be done. So when my mom go to the restaurant and the stores open at midday, the dishes are prepared at 7 a.m. So you pre-cook the meat, you pre-cook the masa, and there's a limited range of options. So we won't have more than 10 dishes, to salad, to pasta, to meat, and anything else. Why? Because you need a limited set of options in order to control how much time we're going to spend. And how, for some strange reason, we translate standard in our area. Just invent another thing that nobody's going to use. And it doesn't matter if you're inventing a standard. If you're doing the standard, it's not a standard. And for most of the, let's say 9% of the software that is made, there's no standard. But if you go to the old business, which is, I think I jumped the slide here, which is banking. Air traffic, trains, everything is standardized. So why? Because if something goes wrong on the situations, imagine this: if there's a bug in a healthcare system that controls how much your heart's going to beat, what's going to happen? For sure, something weird. Probably you may die. So it's not a really good idea. You don't have a standard. If you have a bug on the banking system, some millions may disappear. And this recently happened in Brazil when a bank badly transferred about 4 million reais from one bank to another. And when you think about stability, it's not stable like a stone, it's not immutable. You need to be able to remove the noise when you're taking a decision. And for the folks who live in the US, you probably know IKEA. And for the husbands, if you go to IKEA with your wife in a weekend and your relationship survive, it is love, because a lot of options, and it's a lot of fun when you're trying to make your first house. But what is IKEA? IKEA is a Swedish store where you can buy a door, a table, choose painting for your house. It's a plethora of options, but they are limited, and they are somehow customizable. And what I mean about customization, imagine you have your room, and your room have a wall of 1.8 meters, and the table you're going to buy on IKEA has 2 meters. You send a message to IKEA and say, hey, my room is a little bit shorter than the specification. Can you do a minor adjustment? So a robot do the adjustment. They send the table to your house, and it fits. So why don't we have IKEA way of doing software? The framework kind of do this, but it's not so automated as it should be, especially to the API development. So here's the correct slide. When you consider standardization to the big players, some standards already have 20 years. So some standards exist since 1999. And probably the most business that make a mess on these situations are the startups, because they think they are reinventing something that is new. They don't talk to the stakeholders, they don't talk to the hospitals, to the bank, to the fintech, and just do stuff. And they may create excellent APIs, but they don't talk to the previous existing organizations. And the banks have the FIDIC in Brazil, which is the standard way of doing the POS money sending to the bank accounts. The cargo and routing system has the ADL and the PDDL, which is a way of programming how you get a package sent to the truck, sent to the Airbus, to a ship. And this language has more than 30 years of existence. I think it was invented in 1997. And the healthcare systems, we have Nomad FEARTs, and they are probably most present in the United States, and they're coming into Brazil. Then became popular again due COVID. And on the subway, we have the TMS, which is a formal way of defining the system control of the trains. And if you think you are too awesome and not considering on copy this API, any of the API that exists, including one of your competitors, do it. It's perfectly legal. And if you consider that the Supreme Court of the United States allowed Google to copy the Oracle API, okay, why not? And this is a mindset about the skills and challenge. So programmers talk a lot about the flow. And what is the flow? It's a state where you are practicing really hard skills. It took a lot of time to learn, and everything that you are doing demands a lot of challenge. So it is fun. If you are doing something that is boring, it's because it is too easy to your skill level, and so it doesn't offer any difficulty. But if you're doing something that is difficulty and you are coding like a monkey, you're going to be anxious. And why this is a problem? Because this is where the machines rule. So if you're doing something that let you anxious and it doesn't require a lot of skills, a machine can do better than you. And this is on the range where the jobs are going to disappear. So again, it's better you focus on things that don't require challenge on the mechanical side, but on the mind side, because these are the jobs that are not going to be replaced so easy. Okay. So let's take one of the problems that I spend the most of my time freaking out when because fundamentally I was a mobile developer. So my first contact to APIs was consuming APIs as a mobile developer. Most people really type this manually, so please don't, never. This is not a good idea, because the way you do is not the way your friend do, or the way someone in Africa do, or in Japan. So unless this is machine made, it's probably gonna violate something regarding to REST, especially if you consider HTOAs APIs. And please don't use Express. Express is not a framework. Express is a micro framework. You can use for local MVPs, but never in a production level. Never. Flask, maybe, if you consider that you are using templates. And please don't be attached to language. I freak out when people try to convince me that Node's better or that Java is better. If you bring back to the reasoning, to the mindset about how someone who works in construction or someone who works in a restaurant thinks, it's like to ask the person, do you prefer X or do you prefer cement, or do you prefer lemons? It doesn't make sense. You prefer a certain dish. You prefer a certain way of doing an architecture, but it doesn't. Nobody is attached to cement or wood. And please always choose convention over configuration. Why? Because if you're doing something manually, again, you are introducing uncertainty to your project. And if it is based on convention, probably there's a lot of people that's going to respect the convention. So I've just placed some examples of framework here that each and every one of them has a template way of doing stuff. And then when I say a template way, it's an insane automated way that's going to generate most complete possible API where you can start your work. Okay, so Django for Python. There's one really popular right now that is Fast API. Microsoft is supporting this project. .NET Core, but .NET requires Visual Studio to do this automation. Adonis, Happy, Koa, and Loopback, all of them are JavaScript frameworks. I have a special love by Happy. Happy was made by Walmart, and they created Happy in order to don't freak out using Express. Spring Boot, Quarkus, and Micronaut They are Kotlin and Java frameworks. Rails and Sinatra are Ruby frameworks. And Laravel, that is some strange solution of making APIs using PHP. Is it moving? So, about the stability. The frameworks, when you're considering API, you need to have two things: monitor bugs and monitor the, how do I say, business events. If someone places an item in the cart, if you're having too many requisitions, if you're suffering to the US, everything else. So cache, open API documentation, Swagger, or documentation for your team to use or for clients to use. For example, if you're using a Google Maps API. And the naming conventions, the read, write, update, delete operations, CICD, package distribution, and everything else. It's reasonable to assume that at least your code should be a modularized code, and you should be able to allow teams to independently work in your project. But please, these are not desirable features. This is a minimally prerequisite. This is mandatory. If someone sells this as a feature, this is not a feature. If you don't have it, it is a problem. And if you're doing this manually, sorry, it is wrong. Also, everything that I mentioned this before, you can make by at most 10 commands in the CLI. Or you can do this manually and take a whole week. Okay. Also, REST API developer. Some developers say that the monolith doesn't scale, use noun instead of verbs on the API. They don't have a standard way of doing error messages. I love when I get an API and you get an error message and the status is 200. Some people try to ditch REST APIs using GraphQL or gRCP, and there we have the startup-oriented developers. They are fans of Clojure, Erlang, and other modern languages like Go, and everybody says, hey, write a documentation, but we have a problem. If you're not capable of writing a monolith that works, for sure you're not being able to write a microservice. Sorry, that's the truth. And for example, Django has a way of structuring API where you can split your modules and split the development teams, and it is at least 10 years old. Documentation and version formatting, blah, blah, blah. They are not meant only for humans, but they are meant for machines. Machines should be able to extract information from this convention. So if you do this manually, it is most likely machine won't understand. And your job is to be creative. Your job is not to be a Xerox machine. So you should be focused on solving the problem, not on making a huge discussion about if you should use tab instead of space, if you should use 2 spaces instead of 4. So, okay, this is a HOAS level 3 example. It is from the Swagger documentation, and it is from the pet store, which is one of the examples on the Swagger documentation. Okay, so it is quite simple to detect some standards here, and if you can see, we have a meta which offers the pagination number and the previous page and the next page, the links which are related to the query, and the data itself. And also we have elements here for caching, which is the E tag. Winston, if you don't mind, can you just ping on the chat to make sure that I'm online? But the problem is, when you consider this API, and people say, oh, GraphQL is much better because you can only pick one element, or you can make complex queries. Okay, REST APIs do this, and they do this for the last 20 years. Sorry. So if you get the same URL, you can say, hey, I want you bring me dogs only that are Rottweilers, and limit the query to 10 elements, and bring me only the name and owner field. It works. So GraphQL, it's amazing, but most of the features that people use related to GraphQL, a reasonable REST API also offers. And that is why I say that ORM is a lie, because when you do a hard mapping between static type object and query it can be on the REST side or on the SQL side, you lose the ability to match the class to the query. So if I want to pick only a single element of the query, I had to create another object to do this. Okay, so considering this, hello? Okay, Blueprint and OpenAPI. They are services that you can use to do documentation. So once you write the routes, and you can do a description, multi-language description, to your developers be able to communicate between teams. So if you are, for example, working in Uber, you have to consume the client on your backend API. This is a way of communicate, but also this is an excellent way of making money, because a lot of companies by accident discovered that people were more interested on their API instead of their product. But there's a trick here. It looks like it is made for humans, but the real power of this is not for humans, it's for machines. Why? People try to say that CICD, they are using CICD, but they are not using the tip of the iceberg of the CICD. A real CICD can grab that code and parse it, create an NPM package, and deploy on a private NPM. And this is doing why? Because the machine is capable to understand the tags that are used to do the Swagger documentation. So a real CI/CD, once you manage to create the client, it just goes to the NPM, and as you can see here, it's going to link to you. So if you're using a load balancer, you're capable of detecting that the new version is broken, communicate to the backend, and your front developer can totally work with inner piece. It doesn't have to type any line of REST invocation. And if you're considering that you are working for, you are offering the REST as a service for people that are outside your company, please pay a lot of attention to authentication and authorization. If you're not one of the big players, if you're not a bank, if you're not a military, and if you're not a government, don't use authentication, but don't do the authentication by yourself. Just use social signing. Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, whatever. Don't. Why? Because if a hacker invades your company, you are going to be in big trouble, especially if you are subject to HIPAA law, which manages the healthcare laws in the United States, to the GDPR in Europe, and LGBT in Brazil. You're going to be sued, and depending on the case, you're going to be arrested. So if you are one of those, Google and Amazon and Auth0 and Azure, they offer vaults that have military level encryption authentication system, and out of the box, they also offer ways of you manage ACL and RBAC authentication. So you can also have a fine-grained tuning on the permission level of your API. Okay? And if you're not convinced, I discovered this recently when I was reading the APG documentation. APG was acquired by Google, and they are kind of a way of placing anabolics to your API and provide this as a service. Salesforce made the revenue on the last year, only 50% of the revenue was made by APIs, and this is astonishing. And eBay made 60%. How they do this? Doing integration with local stores, for example, so a client can get their products and provide inside the marketplace of eBay, of Amazon, of Magazine Luiza, which is one of the a huge player on the marketplace in Brazil. They're kind of Walmart in Brazil, and this is the amount of deliveries they made in Brazil only last year, due API integration. I was working at a delivery company, and by accident, they discovered this, that the clients were more interested in the API than in the product itself. And it is working. So our job is solve problems. It's not type really big letters. We're not, I don't know why some programmers have they feel pleasure in on doing all the code optimization and all the obscurity of the code. And honestly, I'm not a big fan of this. I'm more a fan of solving problems. So I'm not attached to language. I'm attaching to solving problems. And that's it. So I'm going to set up the demo here. So Winston, I don't know if people have some questions.
Hi, Joe. Yeah, actually, we got one in our chat. Thank you very much, guys, for supporting and collaborating. One of the question is if you can give some recommendations to apply security in REST API besides authorization.
Yes, but they're more architecture related. It's not only about the API. There are simple things, as of course, as use the JWT authentication using SSL, and depends on the level. For me, for example, I'm working on for a healthcare company, so I have the nightmare. I have to obey all the HIPAA, the compliance. So I need to even set a VPN to communicate to the API. It's not allowed to access it outside of the United States. It's not allowed to access it outside of the cloud infrastructure of the company. And you can pin certificates on Android clients, for example. And if you have more interest in this, I'm going to post this on JobCity blog, more details about how you can have access to this simple code. But for now, imagine, I don't know if you, for example, try to make an API step by step manually. How I can make one API in one command. Here I have a preset of the API. Is it the client being shared with you? Is it showing? I think so. Okay, so you can manually create your Django API or your Fast API, but there's a template called Cookie Cutter. Okay, and if I just do this, it's going to ask me the name of the project. So demo. Voila, I have an API. And if I do here in the demo, everything works. I have the admin, I have the views, and I have the routes. It's going to take a little bit to build the Docker containers, so I have the containers running already here. This is the admin panel. So this is the admin panel to you control the data of the client. Oh, I forgot to Docker Compose. Running the containers, 3, 2, 1. And it works. Okay. So it is a little bit fancier than the Django admin panel, for example. And if you're here, voila, I have all the problems I have to do Swagger API by one command. When I was working with an Android API, I think the team expand 1 or 2 sprints and made the API wrong. So due to this reason, I wasn't able to consume with automated generation. If you don't like Swagger, you can use Redoc, which is another fancy way of doing the documentation. And what is the cool part about this? I'm going to share again the other clients. Most people don't know this guy here, which is SwaggerGen. So if I come here and I have my clients, I can do SwaggerGen, CodeGen. I pick a language, I don't know, let's say JavaScript. So JavaScript. And the URL of the Swagger I have just instantiated. And oh, demo effect, sorry. I have some clients pre-generated here. So what happened is it has zoom in, please. Okay. Okay. If I go here to the clients, it creates all the classes required to you consume the API as a client. So I spent a lot of time in Android making these using Volley or retrofits. And what happens when someone changes the API on the backend? I have to type this. And several times I did unit tests that this serialization was wrong because someone changed the API version. So I can grab this code, generate an APM, generate a pip package, generate whatever package, and just deploy on the cloud. And not ever again the people involved in the app development was gonna have to do this manually. So this is real CICD. Any other questions, Winston?
If you, yeah, JP, one thing, if you share your website or something, trying to soon a little bit the test because they are having a really hard time trying to read the website. I got another question. Thank you very much, Jose Miguel Lanza, for your question. Next question is from Joans Botello, and it's, when do you recommend to use GraphQL?
When I do recommend GraphQL? When you have, you think this way, you have the idempotency, I don't know how to say it in English, but if you, in theory, you have to hit an API on the backend, and it must have the same result always. So imagine you have to do a complex operation, and you need to hit several endpoints. So you collect the information, and then you map to the backend. You can do this on the GraphQL side. So you can create complex queries and mutations. The mutations would be related to the patch, put, and post. So you are, instead of doing the complex work on the client side, you are moving this to the backend side. This is one of the situations I can recommend GraphQL. So also you have something that is called subscription. Imagine you want to make a chat, and instead of doing polling or using WebSockets, and WebSockets quite hard to scale, you can use subscriptions. So every time the data is modified on the server side, it automatically changes on the client side. This is one of the great features that GraphQL provides. Also gRPC. I can't listen. I think you're mute.
Yes, I am. Sorry. I don't know, John, if that already answered your question. So if we did, well, I don't see any other question here in our chat. So thank you very much, everyone, to join us this in this Launch and Learn. As you know, in our description and in the description of this video, you will find all our social media accounts. So start following us. And again, join us next month with another Launch and Learn. So thank you very much, JP, for this amazing speech.
Thank you very much for you. See you soon, people.